morning, America. This is America's Voice Now. Appreciate you joining with us this morning. 8:06 a.m. Our president came out and made an announcement that he is constrained by a system that our founders put in place. No kidding. I think that's the whole idea, Mr. President. I believe the original intent of the framers was to design a document that bound men down with the chains of a constitution, lest their personal ambition, bias, and agenda destroy a republic. That's exactly the whole point, Mr. President. In his discussion relating to firearms and his attempt to ratchet up the discussion, he said Wednesday that recent steps by Colorado to tighten its gun show laws there doesn't have to be a conflict between keeping citizens safe and protecting Second Amendment rights to gun ownership. With all due respect, sir, those two statements are mutually exclusive. He says, I don't believe, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Let me correct that. This is his quote. I believe there doesn't have to be a conflict in reconciling these realities. There doesn't have to be a conflict between protecting our citizens and protecting our Second Amendment rights. Every day that we want to do that we wait to do something about it, even more of our fellow citizens are stolen from our lives by a bullet from a gun. He went on to say, you hear some of these quotes. I need a gun to protect myself from the government. We can't do background checks because the government is going to come take my guns away. Well, the government is us. These officials are elected by you. They are elected by you. I am elected by you. I am constrained, as they are constrained, by a system that our founders put in place. It's a government of and by and for the people. That rhetoric is a blatant lie. The founders put in place these constraints specifically with people like Obama in mind. The whole concept of the Second Amendment, as I've noted previously many times, is the principle of MAD, mutually assured destruction. The idea is simply this. In the event that the First Amendment and our right to redress our grievances with our government cannot make a difference, if all else fails, if our nation is falling into tyranny, we have the right to defend ourselves from a government in tyranny. But you cannot have a constraining force and liberty which both operate in the same sphere. You cannot put matter and antimatter in the same place, at the same time, in the same space. The two are diametrically opposed. The words shall not be infringed is a negative constraint upon the government. You may not infringe. Colorado has shown that practical progress is possible, says the president. Really? Why? Because they passed it and we haven't seen the ramifications or the unintended consequences yet? They've enacted tougher background checks that won't infringe on the rights of responsible gun owners, but will help keep guns out of the hands of dangerous people. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the entire purpose of that statement, is to elicit an emotional response, because rational, reasoned argument and logic don't rule anymore. We've enacted tougher background checks that won't infringe on the rights of responsible gun owners. The sentence is an oxymoron. If you've enacted tough background checks, how can you say that that does not infringe on the rights of responsible gun owners? Is this jumbo shrimp? Senate intelligence? Baby grand piano? Explain, Mr. President, how you can string one sentence together and contradict yourself in less than 12 or 14 words. We've seen enough enacted tougher background checks that won't infringe on the rights of responsible gun owners. The fact that you're doing background checks at all is the infringement, sir. We need to have universal background checks for every sale. That's a minimum. Really? Obama came out and said, I don't believe that weapons designed for theaters of war have a place in movie theaters. Okay. I want you to start analyzing and reading between the lines what you read in the press. In fact, I'm doing a story on this, which I'm going to post up on our website, and I'll post a link on Facebook as well to it. What you have to recognize is everything that you hear from the mainstream media and from the president and the mouth of these propagandists who run our nation is designed and geared to do one thing: elicit an emotional response from you. And here's why. They know that there is zero hope of utilizing the basic foundation of law, constitutional principles, precepts, and tenets. And they know that logic and reason can overrule their arguments which have no foundation in law. Now, this is a constitutional professor who's talking to you here. And he says, I don't believe that weapons designed for theaters of war have a place in a movie theater. What he's really saying there is, forget the facts. I want you emotionally charged. I want you to be emotionally charged. The statement right after that says, and I'm going to read you the entire sentence because it's important. I don't believe that weapons designed for theaters of war have a place in movie theaters, Obama said to applause. Listen to what you are being fed. Understand that what it is manipulation. Our press has completely abdicated any pretense at objectivity and fairness. They have completely abdicated their responsibility to keep you informed of what's really happening around you. Instead, they have become the chief propaganda ministry for the federal government of the United States of America. The chief propaganda ministry. Joseph Goebbels, the notorious and infamous Nazi, would be thrilled with what he sees coming out of our press today, because he was the guy who actually learned how to use the media in a way in which minds could be altered by emotion. That's exactly what they're doing here. They are altering your mindset and rewiring you over a period of time to think differently. This is mind control, nothing more, nothing less. It is the Delphi principle and the Delphi technique used with impunity and immunity. We're going to take a break. We'll return in a moment. We'll take your calls.
There is is this product on Amazon that is simply going crazy? The banana slicer. Almost 2,500 consumer reviews. I've been trying to come up with an ideal way to slice a banana. Use a knife, they say. Well, my parole officer won't let me around knives. Or how about this one? What can I say about the banana slicer that hasn't already been said about the wheel or penicillin? Obviously, just a pure hoax.
Saturdays noon to 3 and weekdays at 7:35 for your digital minute. It's Kim Commando on the Ozarks Best News Talk 107.1. Out of 365 days a year, we celebrate holidays, anniversaries, and other important days. But there is one day you look forward to, your birthday. I wanna wish you a happy birthday. Ryan's Steakhouse of West Plains is proud to bring you the Birthday Club weekday mornings with Cooper & Company. Our daily winner receives one buffet and a drink to Ryan's. Just call your birthdays in weekday mornings with Cooper & Company at 255-0427. Brought to you by Ryan's and the Ozarks Best News Talk.
And happy birthday to you. Cha-cha-cha-cha.
You're being fed and you're being misled. Listen to the language that they use to try to bend your mind to think in a way. And this is CBS, by the way. Communist Broadcasting Socialism. That's what CBS is, by the way. Communists broadcasting socialism. Because they know that if they came right out and said that this was communism, you wouldn't buy into it. But CBS is bound and determined to make sure that we fall under totalitarianism. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney said the efforts by Colorado and Connecticut, which are two of the most onerous gun control states right now in the nation, here's what his quote was, represent important progress on these issues and are useful models to look at as we undertake efforts in Washington. Read between the lines and make no mistake about it. What they're looking to do, and if you haven't heard, Colorado and Connecticut, Connecticut just passed a law this morning that in order to own a handgun, you have to have your fingerprints taken. And in order to own or purchase ammunition, you have to get state approval. So here's the game. We can't get your damn guns. So what we're going to do is we're going to make ammunition so hard to get and so hard to obtain that for all intents and purposes, you may as well just have a baseball bat. That's the principle, that's the idea, that's the concept. Listen to the way that they couch this story. Obama's visit showcased a state with a long centrist tradition that prizes its Western frontier heritage. Western frontier heritage and centrist traditions are usually not used in the same sentence with draconian gun control, but okay. It goes on to say, but an influx of young coastal transplants and growing Hispanic voter clout. Listen to those words. But an influx of young coastal transplants, translation, liberal progressives, and growing Hispanic voter clout, translation, illegal immigrants who in many cases were given amnesty over the last 30 years, who are now voters, have helped Democrats win a string of victories in the state. Several county sheriffs in Colorado have vowed that they will not enforce the new gun restrictions. More than a dozen of them had gathered together a mile from where Obama's appearance was on Wednesday in Colorado, and were basically slamming the new regulations as ineffective and unconstitutional. Justin Smith, who was the sheriff of Larimer County, dismissed the president's visit as, quote, a victory lap and a slap in the face to all Coloradans. The Colorado Sheriff's Association vocally opposed the gun control package, while the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police supported it. Sheriffs are elected in Colorado and generally are Republican. what you have to recognize is that everything that is done, that you hear from the media, and everything you hear from this administration, and every sound bite you hear from every congressman or every senator or every White House representative, every agency head, are all designed to do one thing, and that is to bend your mind to their will. This, ladies and gentlemen, is propaganda. It is nothing more and nothing less. Make no mistake about it. What our government is doing today is identical to what previous governments have done repeatedly through the centuries in an attempt to sway public opinion and utilize the concept of a democracy to override the principles of a republic. It failed in Rome. Did you know that Rome was originally a republic? Then Rome descended into a monarchy with a Caesar. And the principles of republicanism, and I don't mean that in a political party sense, the principles of a republic in which there is an elected representative who acts on behalf of the people, and that there is a base rule of law that protects the minority from the majority's reach into their pockets, quite frankly. I mean, think about it. The whole purpose of government is to do what? Protect your rights. What are those rights? The right to life, liberty, and property. Without the right to life, property, and liberty are meaningless. Without the right to liberty, the right to property is meaningless. If you can be held as a slave, you're not entitled to own property. Without the right to property, your life and your liberty, for all effective purposes, have no meaning. This is easily understood. Here's the deal. If you cannot own property, you effectively have no vested interest in your own life. And you cannot have liberty without the right to own property, because property is the benefit and the result of your labor. I am constrained by a system that our founders put in place. Yes, sir, you are. What you don't recognize is that does not allow you to do an end run around their intent to constrain you. And what most Americans don't understand is that the press is being used as the manipulation tool to accomplish that end. Do you know what they came out and said yesterday? Dan Pfeiffer, who is a White House senior advisor. White House senior, I'm going to just read you the story because it's relatively brief. White House senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer said Wednesday that the prominent Drudge Report website, quote, hurts the White House's message because of its dominating effect on the news cycle. Pfeiffer said that he was ambivalent to what Matt Drudge links to on his website, but he lamented that the site led to a Pavlovian response from reporters. Really? Really? Anyone saying anything can get caught up in the spin cycle in a way that is very damaging, said Pfeiffer to Politico. Quote, it hurts what we're trying to do. Pfeiffer goes on to say, he'll often be approached by reporters who say that they have a question strictly because, quote, it's on Drudge. When asked what he thought of that, he said, I sort of asked them to repeat themselves. Say that to themselves out loud again and think about it, said Pfeiffer. And everyone's always a little embarrassed about it and says, my boss, my assignment editor's on me about this. The accurate response should have been not that you asked the question because it appeared on Drudge, because that's your job as an independent press, to question the motives, the agendas, the initiatives of government. That is your job. In fact, it's your only job. Not to build upon sensationalism. Your only job is to ask questions and demand answers. Not because it appears on Drudge. Drudge is nothing other than a link to other websites. That's all Drudge does. If you've ever gone to the Drudge Report, if you haven't, you should be. They choose stories that are posted from newspapers, websites, and media outlets all over the world. They find a headline, they find a story that they feel is interesting and of national importance, and they post a link to it. Drudge Report is nothing other than links to other stories. That's all it is. They are a consolidator of other people's stories. They don't write any of their own. They don't have an editorial staff. They don't have an investigative news staff. They don't even write news. All they do is link you to stories of interest. That's all. And so no reporter should ever say, I'm asking you a question because it's on the Drudge Report. What would possess a reporter to do that? All that does is show that they are inept and incompetent, and that they don't have the ability to think for themselves. Ah, there's the rub. There's the rub. That's where the proof really resides, folks. Media today, and most individuals, don't have an opinion of their own. They form an opinion based on a soundbite or a snippet or a statement or a phrase or a speech they heard from someone else. But they never do the hard work that comes with being an intellectually honest individual. They're unwilling to do the homework that it requires. Well, it's a fast news cycle. I don't care. If you're going to do something, be an expert at it. I'm not a trained journalist. I'm not a trained commentator. I'm not a trained opinionator. I'm not a trained anything in the media business. I have zero media training of any kind whatsoever. What I do have is an inquiring mind. Not the enquirer's kind, the inquirer's kind. And I'm willing to sit down and do the homework and the research. I'm willing to look at all viewpoints, study those issues in depth, and then formulate an opinion. And I can tell you this, when I formulate an opinion, invariably I have substantial amounts of research and information behind me upon which I base that opinion. I don't just capture someone else's soundbite and repeat it. I don't parrot someone else's idea or ideology. If you scratch the surface of my opinion, you keep having to scratch all the way down to the core. If you scratch the surface of most people's opinion, it's like a hollow Christmas ball with paint on it. You scratch the surface off, you scratch the paint off the surface, and what's inside? Nothing. It's hollow. It's empty. It's a shell. What causes that shell? I'm going to tell you in one word. Propaganda. Propaganda. That is the cause of the demise of the Fourth Estate here in our nation. We're going to take a break. When we return, we'll be more than happy to take your calls. I'll give you the number when we return.
Fox News Radio. I'm Chris Foster. In response to the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings, Connecticut's legislature passes tough new gun control laws after debate lasting into the night.
The state Senate okayed the bipartisan legislation earlier on Wednesday, and now the House of Representatives following suit. The governor has vowed to sign it into law when it reaches his desk. The measures include a ban on the sale of large-capacity ammunition magazines.
Fox's Ainsley Earhart, a signing ceremony scheduled for noon at the state capitol in Hartford. A life sentence for a British man who set a fire killing his 6 kids.
The judge in sentencing Mick Philpott, she said to him, "You are a disturbingly dangerous man. Your guiding principle is what Mick Philpott wants, he gets."
Sky News correspondent Tom Parmenter. Philpott's wife and a friend get 17 years each. Prosecutors say the plan was to rescue the kids and frame Philpott's mistress for arson to win a child custody battle. Fox News, we report, you decide.
Get a hold of Brian down at Ozark Mountain Self-Reliance. You can call him at 870-492-4030, or you can find him on the web at ozarkmtnselfreliance.com. Located a half-mile east of Walmart on Route 62 in Mountain Home. My friends over at Chantilly's Artisan Bakery at 255-2253, number 2 Evans Arcade off the square in West Plains. Best damn bakery in 100 miles. You can reach Mary at 255-2253. My friend Bill Stone over at Stone Construction at 293-0116. Whether remodeling or doing new or custom construction or light commercial, Bill's the guy for you. 293-0116. West Plains Pawn and Gun, located on Route 160, just about a mile east of Walmart on the right-hand side. westplainspawn.com. You can also reach them by a telephone at 417-256-3000. Friends over at the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue, right off the square in West Plains. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com, and you can call them at 417-257-7799. Also, don't forget to stop by Pizza Hut for an outstanding lunch special between 11 and 2. Salad and pasta all together. You can also visit them on Tuesday evenings for family night. Kids eat free under 12. And Jason over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, the sponsor of our telephone line. Make sure that you see Wits End Classic Barbershop for your next shave and a haircut. Outstanding, fine young man and a great patriot as well. He's on the square in West Plains.
There's one man on this earth who really, truly gets it.
By the way, what the hell is he doing in the Middle East? Making a complete ass out of himself. What is the point of this visit? To say he visited? It's an embarrassment. He goes into these places, you know, he's a cult figure in the United States, and so he goes to these places and he figures he's gonna talk these people into admiring him and whatever comes out of his mouth. No, it only works that way here.
Mark Levin is on the radio.
Weeknights 5 to 8 on the Ozarks Best News Talk.
Weather is a service of News Talk 107.1 The Point. Contact Josh or Cody at 255-2548 for more information on making weather sponsorships part of your marketing plans.
From the Point Weather Center for this morning, we'll have mostly cloudy skies with some rain and sleet, then all rain for the afternoon, the high 52. Straight shower this evening, clearing later tonight, low 36. Sunny tomorrow with a much milder afternoon, high 66. Sunny Saturday, high 70. I'm staff meteorologist Jim Rinaldi, and for more information, visit my1071thepoint.com.
If you're looking for a new or used pistol, shotgun, or rifle, West Plains Pawn and Gun has over 450 firearms in stock. All your favorite models like Beretta, Glock, Smith & Wesson, Kimber, and many, many more. West Plains Pawn and Gun is also a Class 3 arms dealer, so if they don't have it on the shelf, West Plains Pawn and Gun can order it for you. Even those hard-to-get guns. West Plains Pawn and Gun, 1713 U.S. Highway 160 West in West Plains, or online at westplainspawn.com.
The purpose of propaganda is ultimately mass mind control. Not mind control in a science fiction manner. Not the idea that, well, you know, we can sit here and have Vigo waves rain down upon the brains of people and make them all into automatons. It's not that science fiction-y. Doesn't have to be. You can see what the media has done to the thinking of the United States in just the past 10 or 15 years alone. Look at how they characterize and demonize anyone who has any involvement whatsoever with firearms. Look at the way in which they are manipulating your thinking and the thinking of millions and millions of Americans around the country. You know what I find amazing? The ACLU came out the other day and said that Harry Reid's gun legislation could threaten privacy rights and civil liberties. Now, you all know I'm no great fan of the ACLU. Occasionally, they come out and they do something right. And in this case, they are making the correct statement. The problem is it's too little too late. The inclusion of universal background checks, which is the poll-tested linchpin of all of these democratic principles and proposals out here on gun control, raises two significant concerns. That's the ACLU's Chris Calabrese, or Calabrese, I'm not sure. He's a privacy lobbyist. And he's careful to note that the ACLU doesn't strictly oppose universal background checks for gun purchases. If you're going to require a background check, we think it should be effective. However, we also believe these checks have to be conducted in a way that protects privacy and civil liberties. So in that regard, we think the current legislation and the current proposal on universal background checks raises two very significant concerns. The first is that it treats the records for private purchases very differently than purchases made through licensed sellers. Uh-oh. He just let the cat out of the bag. He just let the cat out of the bag. This is why it's so important for you to read. And it's why it's so important for you to read between the lines. What he was really saying there is that the records for private purchases will be recorded and preserved in a way that will be different from what is done for a gun dealer to sell a gun to Joe Schmo. He doesn't come right out and say that, but that is what he's saying, and you got to listen to it. Quote, the first is that it treats the records for private purchases very differently than purchases made through licensed dealers. Under existing law, most information regarding an approved purchase is destroyed within 24 hours when a licensed seller does a National Instant Criminal Background Check System check now. Almost all of it is destroyed within 90 days. It's not, by the way. That's a misstatement. But it's supposed to be. But what he's really telling you, by omission, is that under existing law, the information regarding an approved purchase is destroyed within 24 hours and it has to be destroyed within 90 days. But because they're going to treat records for private purchases very differently than purchases made through licensed dealers, the law is going to treat Bob and Harry, who sell a gun to each other but use an FFL dealer to record that transaction, completely differently. What they're going to do is they're going to take Bob's name and Harry's name, and they're going to throw them into a database of past and current gun owner. And by the way, a past gun owner is more than likely a current gun owner, maybe of a different firearm. Now are you getting the picture here? So effectively, you're building a database of every individual in the nation who buys and sells a gun, and you know now that the buyer has guns, and the seller has a 90% chance of having more guns, other than the one he sold. Calabrese goes on to say, unfortunately, we have seen in the past that the creation of these types of records leads sometimes to the creation of government databases and collections of personal information on all of us. It's not an inevitable result, but we have seen that happen in the past. As we have seen with large government databases, if you build it, they will come. Wow. If you build it, they will come. We know that. He goes on to say that Reed's legislation fails to include privacy best practices. In other words, once you've completed using that information for the purposes of the background check, as an example, you're supposed to destroy the information. But they're not going to. The existing Reed legislation says, which is simply that a record has to be kept of a private transfer. And it doesn't have any of the protections that we have in current law for existing licensees. We think that kind of record-keeping requirement could result in long-term detailed records of purchases and creation of new government databases. And they come to use databases for all sorts of different purposes. For example, the National Counterterrorism Center recently gave itself the authority, wow, listen to that language, recently gave itself the authority to collect all kinds of existing federal databases and perform terrorism-related searches regarding those databases. They essentially exempted themselves from a lot of existing Privacy Act protections. So here you have a government database, or a series of government databases, that the National Counterterrorism Center has given itself the authority? How do you justify that with constitutional laws on the Fourth Amendment and privacy? The right against unreasonable search and seizure, which, by the way, doesn't just include your property, but includes your privacy. Well, there's no word privacy that ever appears in the Constitution. I know. You know why? Because it's an inherent right, you knucklehead. It's an inherent right that you have the right to privacy. That's why we have things like doors that close on the bathroom. Human beings have a right to their private thoughts, their private personal ideas, and they have a right to their privacy in terms of what they do and how they do it and why they do it. It's not up to public speculation. The National Counterterrorism Center gave itself the authority to collect all kinds of existing federal databases and perform terrorism-related searches in those databases. That's called data mining. So what they do is they go out there, they throw all this information into a computer, they write an algorithm that says, go through all of these databases and look for people who are gun owners, who have ever had a criminal record of any kind, who might live in the Midwest where guns are more prolific, who might have voted one way or another, who might have donated to one type of a campaign or another, who may have been a member of the NRA or the Gun Owners of America or one of the other organizations out there. You see, here's what happens. You take all these bullet points and you compile them up into a list and you say, now find me everybody who meets this criteria. All of those people are now labeled as terrorists. That's a broad statement. How can you say that? Well, they're called the National Counterterrorism Center. Duh. Calabrese goes on to say, they exempted themselves from a lot of existing Privacy Act protections. So you must worry that you're going to see searches of the database and an expansion for purposes that were not intended when the information was collected. Wow. But you don't hear any of this in the propaganda that's being fed to you by the mainstream media. What you have heard, and I'm going to say this phrase right now, and it's already been coined by the media. I'm going to say this phrase, and you tell me if this phrase doesn't immediately bring to light a mental image. Common sense gun control. They keep reiterating the phrase over and over and over and over and over again. But it's common sense gun control. Don't worry about the details. It's common sense. Trust us. And the press is sitting there wagging their head like dutiful little dogs. We'll be back in just a moment.
With so many loan and banking choices out there, it may seem like a wild goose chase to find the right banking solution for your needs. At Howell County Bank, branch of Bank of Thayer, they have your best interest in mind. Come by today and see for yourself how starting a consumer, ag, or commercial loan is simple and really your best option. With low rates and a caring staff, you can rest easy knowing your loan is in the right hands. Howell County Bank, branch of Bank of Thayer. It's not what they do, it's how they do it. Equal Housing Lender, member FDIC.
Complete service and satisfaction is the Earls Dodge Jeep difference from all the other dealers in the Ozarks. Hello, I'm Janet, and I invite you to come check out our new and pre-owned on the lot at Earls Dodge Jeep on North Highway 63 across from the fairgrounds in West Plains, where we go out of our way to make you happy. That means doing what it takes to make sure you're satisfied with your total package on your new purchase, which means taking care of you after the sale. It all adds up at Earls Dodge Jeep, where buying a vehicle is as simple as it should be.
It's a call and make your voice heard on the biggest issues making headlines today or on absolutely anything in your head. Every call I get goes on the air totally unscreened. It's unpredictable and uncensored, and you'll never know what to expect. Anything can and will happen on the next Alan Combs Show.
And that's who you can catch every weeknight, 9 till midnight. The Alan Combs Show on the Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point, Monday through Friday.
They say that people actually suffer from anxiety if they don't know where their cell phone is. And you know what they call it now? Are you ready? Nomophobia. There are other phobias like boobtubophobia. That's when you're afraid of missing Judge Judy. Okay, the worst of all is commandophobia.
Kim Commando Saturdays from noon till 3 and Monday through Friday with your digital minute at 7:22. The Ozarks Best News Talk, 107.1 The Point.
You know, this particular article, and I'll post a link to this up on Facebook and on our website. This is on the DC Caller. Now, the DC Caller is a pretty conservative organization, news organization. And so at least you're getting a true report on what this particular gentleman is saying, who is from the ACLU. What he goes on to say is, Reed's legislation is hauntingly vague about, and by the way, he hasn't even gotten to his second concern yet. Reed's, let's see, where the heck was I? Reed's legislation is hauntingly vague about who would physically keep this information about American gun purchases. But it's crystal clear that records will be kept. Regulations shall include a provision requiring a record of transaction of any transfer that occurred between an unlicensed transferor and a licensed transferee. Note the language. Any, first of all, shall include a provision, which means it must be in there. And it must record any transfer that occurred. So here's what the ACLU has to say about that. The ACLU's second significant concern with Reed's legislation is that it too broadly defines the term transfer, creating complicated criminal law that law-abiding Americans may unwittingly break. It's certainly a civil liberty concern. You worry about, in essence, a criminal justice trap where a lawful gun owner who wants to obey the law inadvertently runs afoul of the criminal law. They don't intend to transfer a gun, or they don't think that what they're doing, or they don't think that's what they're doing. But under the law, they can be defined as making a transfer. We think it's important that anything that is tied to a criminal sanction be easy to understand and avoid allowing too much prosecutorial discretion. Holy smoke! That is, I mean, just that whole sentence ought to tell you everything that you need to know about this bill that Reed's trying to shovel down our throats on universal background checks. He goes on to say, for example, different gun ranges are treated differently. You're firing a firearm in one geographic location and you're okay, but in another you're not. And those kinds of things, it's going to be hard for your average consumer to really internalize and figure out the difference. Criminal sanctions shouldn't hinge on those kinds of differences. Separate from the ACLU's concern with a universal background check system, Calabrese flagged another provision of the legislation invented by Senator Barbara Boxer that the ACLU is also, quote, worried about. School tip lines for reporting potentially dangerous students. Quote, potentially dangerous students. Here's what Calabrese says. We're worried about this tip line. We think we already have a phone number for reporting dangerous situations. It's called 911. The tip line doesn't have any guidance for who should be included, how we should start to vet these requests, who should be included in the system, what you should do with the information once you get it. It seems like a dangerously unregulated avenue that's going to risk pushing more kids into the criminal justice system. For example, what's the school supposed to do if they get an anonymous phone call that some kid is dangerous? How are they supposed to treat that? Do they have a liability if they ignore it? Should the kid be suspended? Or should he be scrutinized by a school safety officer because of an anonymous tip? You can see how this could run amok very quickly. These are high schools. Lord knows, if you're going to give a kid an anonymous opportunity to lash out at someone, you're going to see a lot of problems. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not familiar with the concept of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, I strongly encourage you to get and read that book. What you are seeing here today, perpetrated on the backs and in the minds of Americans, is exactly the description put together as the foundational basis of that book. It's a story. It's not a political diatribe. Get yourself a copy. Read it. I get it. It's 1,500 pages. I don't have the time. Find the time. Because what you're seeing going on in America right now, with political correctness run amok, government supervision, government monitoring, government surveillance, read 1984. I dare you. Go ahead, caller. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, Mike, winter's kind of still hanging on down here at Southern Post.
Yeah, it's pretty chilly up here, too.
You betcha. You were talking about privacy issues earlier. You guys probably are aware of the guns back in the churches down here, right?
No.
Well, that passed, so they can, just like Missouri, it's up to the pastor.
Oh, I got you. Okay, right. The pastor can authorize people to have a gun in their church.
Yeah, that was a few months ago, but now at the close of the session, Governor Beebe was out. So Lieutenant Governor Darr went ahead and behind his back signed a bill to keep the names and addresses of CCW holders private. And Beebe wanted it to just sit there and do nothing, but it was in danger of not, having an override on a veto override. So anyway, when he was asked by the media why he did that, he said imminent priority and possible danger. So there are a few of them down here kind of know it's about over with.
Yep.
And he also made it clear, like I believe too, that the anti-gun crowd will harass a lot of people if they're listed on a regular basis.
Of course, we know that to be the fact. We saw it in New York. So
anyway,
thanks for that tip.
Throw along a little bit of good news for a change.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Go ahead, caller. Okay, I guess I got tired of waiting. So here's the deal, folks. What I want you to gather from all of this discussion today is the simple fact that we are living in a world and in a nation in which propaganda is the main method, the main medium by which our government and our press is operating. That the two are in league to accomplish an ideological agenda that is distinctly against your best interest. That these two organizations, government and media, when combined together, are dangerous to our republic. And that they have perverted the primary purpose of the press, which is to be the watchdog over government, not its lapdog. A real, true, functioning press will go out there and give you a story like this. where you get some depth, some understanding, some intelligence, some logic, some reason, some opposing viewpoints, so you can check that you're not drinking your own Kool-Aid. So many people will toss the ACLU under the bus invariably without regard to the fact that there are a couple of things that the ACLU can actually do that are good. I'm no great fan of them, don't misunderstand me. But what I am going to say to you is this. If you want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, you need to check yourself and find out whether or not you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. You should approach every instance and every issue and every topic and every story and every article that you read with a wide open, objective mind. Not subjective, not leaning upon your own prior bias. And when you read stories and articles, you must absolutely, and when you hear them essentially, effectively, you must absolutely double check and start to read between the lines. Listen to what you are being told and listen to what is being used to manipulate your thought process. That is the key issue surrounding how these press and media operations work. They are using their influence because, you see, once you give a media organization like this access to your mind, once you allow them to have access into your mind through your eyes and through your ears, you effectively give them, it's like letting a hacker into your network. Think of it that way. It's like allowing someone to get inside your network. In this case, it's your mental synopsis network. And while they're in there, they start rewiring things. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you now that the mass media in this nation has one and only one goal. And that is to be, and when I say mass media, I'm talking about the major news outlets. By the way, proof of this concept is this. They're going to renegotiate the cybersecurity bill in secret, by the way, next week. And furthermore, you keep hearing all of this stuff on there about how they want to be able to control what's going on the internet. And you got a guy like Pfeiffer out there whining about how the Drudge Report is standing in the way of their effectiveness of using mind control against you. Bingo. I want you to start being cognizant of what's going on around you. I want you to be situationally aware that when you are listening or reading a story or hearing political diatribe, on both sides, by the way, the Republicans and the Democrats are equally guilty of this. Neither of them tell you the whole story. Your job as a logical, reasoning human being is to make sure that you are availing yourself of all the facts before you make and form an opinion. Okay, I do want to remind you folks that this weekend coming up is the 2-day tactical pistol TAC 1 pistol course. If you are interested in any way, shape, and form of attending that, it's a 2-day event. It's $175. It's only $175 for our listeners. It's normally a $225 class. If you want to attend that, you can do so, but you'll need to immediately contact 293-3737. And that's Don Crowley's phone number, 293-3737, and schedule yourself for that class. Or you can send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us at Facebook at facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and on YouTube at YouTube/America's Voice Now. We'll see you tomorrow.
This is KBMB Birch Tree is the Ozarks best news talk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.